We have been working from home during months due to COVID, and recently got back to normal. But what is this new normal? In the first session, Heléne Lidström will talk about this new normal in the context of our daily professional life. How does it impact the office, the leadership, the technology supporting us, and our skills? Then afterwards, Mark will talk about the effect of how business events have changed and the trends going forward. We will have a Q&A after the two presentations, but you can submit your questions already to us during the presentations just by clicking on the Q&A button that you find on the top right of your screen. It will open a chat box where you can send your questions to Christian, who will collect them and go through them during the Q&A session afterwards. So time for our first speaker, Heléne Lidström. Heléne has implemented flexible working methods long before the pandemic. With Microsoft, they received the award of Sweden's best workplace 3 times in a row, and they won the reward of Sweden's most attractive office. With her experience of more than 20 years in leading positions at several companies, she wrote a book, The New Working Life: How Sweden's Best Workplace Was Created, which is full of concrete tips and tools to generate success. I'm sure she will share already a few of them today. So, Heléne, welcome. And the floor is yours, I would say. So here's your presentation.
Thank you very much, John. It's so nice to be here. So let's see if I can click on my presentation. Yes! We have been talking about the future of work and what it will look like for many, many years, actually. But then 2 years ago, the pandemic hit us, and overnight we were forced to work from home. And we were also forced to adapt new ways of working. So the pandemic has really accelerated the future of work quite rapidly. And I have, as you said, John, I have been supporting organizations to implement a more flexible way of working for the last 10 years. And never has the interest for new ways of working been so huge as today. I would say that the topic is on every leadership team's agenda today. Whether you call it hybrid, flexible working, remote working, I mean, there are many new terms to our vocabulary right now. But when we talk about new ways of working, there are so many questions that are raised. How should we shape the future of work in our organization based on our needs? What is the new normal for us? How should we design our future office or our future workplace? And actually, do we really need an office? Or can we decrease our office space? And how do we as leaders lead from a distance? How do we know if people are feeling okay? And when and where do we expect people to work, and from where? And how do we make sure that we have the right technology and the right processes? There are quite many questions, and I guess you are familiar with some of them. And I think it's so interesting right now because it's not only leadership teams around the world that discuss how to adopt these new ways of working. The topic is highly debated and discussed everywhere right now. It's in conferences and webinars like this one today, and actually in the news. And I was also invited to the morning show on television to talk about how to work post-COVID. So it's really a very exciting times. But why don't we start here? Let's start by looking back for a moment. I don't know if you're familiar with this machine. In Swedish, it's called a stämpelklocka. Stamp clock or a time clock. I don't know exactly the right term, but stämpelklocka in Swedish. And this machine represents how we have been evaluating work. Because for decades, we have evaluated work based on two aspects. It's time and presence in the office. But I find it quite funny because the stämpelklocka or this time clock contributed sometimes to a particular behavior. Because people normally stood in line to wait for the clock to turn 5 o'clock. And I actually had some colleagues, they were very rude because they asked if somebody else could clock out so they could leave earlier from work. Those were the times. But if we fast forward, the pandemic hit the world and we were forced to work from home. Probably the biggest and longest global remote work experiment ever. But we learned something. We learned that we actually worked from home. Even though we weren't present in the office, we could see that productivity didn't decrease. And I think something that we stated when I was at Microsoft 10 years ago, we said that work is not the place, it's actually something we do. And I think many organizations realize that it's actually something we do. We don't really need to be in the office to get things done. But we also need to have the right kind of information. We need to have the tools, and we also need to have the right leadership in order to get things done. And that's what we always also have seen. The pandemic impacts every aspect of our life, every aspect of our work. Our needs have changed. The way we do business has changed. And many studies have been conducted during the last 2 years, and it's very clear that we have new expectations on how we should work, how we should meet, and how we should collaborate. So I think it's almost an understatement that the pandemic accelerated the future work. Some people state that it has accelerated the digital transformation by as much as like 7 to 10 years. So what happened during these 2 years is actually worth 7 to 10 years when it comes to the digital transformation. So now to the $1 million question. As you asked from the beginning, John, what is the new normal? Is there one question to this question? I don't think there is one answer actually. But one thing is for sure. And I think that is that it will be hybrid in nature with a combination of people working where it makes most sense for them. We can actually see that flexibility has become the norm. But there's not one size fits all approach. All organizations, they need to do their homework. So how can we support employees and how can we support their expectations and also our own business needs? Because we need to bear in mind that we are all different. People are different, and also our organizations are different. And the right way for one company might not be the same for another company. I think you see both of in my screen, I see both now. I just wanted to share some examples here. We have Spotify. Spotify announced in February last year a big change in their policies on working mode and location. And I think you've seen this. They launched the Work from Anywhere program, which means that their employees are able to work from wherever they want. They can work from home, from the office, from a cafe, or actually anywhere they like. And many studies support this hybrid work model. Harvard Business Review, for instance, they find that 70 to 80% of all organizations are already considering themselves hybrid because they are letting their employees work from home regularly. And they're planning also to do so even post-COVID. So I would argue that the hybrid work is for most companies a must today in order to retain talent and to be able to attract the stars of tomorrow. Because employees today, they expect the flexibility. They expect to be able to work remote or wherever they like. But there are also companies that are not as convinced to give their employees the freedom to choose when and where to work. And I think this is so interesting because last week I read this article about the CEO at Goldman Sachs. And he stated that remote work is not idle for us and it's not a new normal. So Goldman Sachs are now ordering their employees back to the office. And I really wish them the best of luck. I think it will be very difficult to force people back to the office. I strongly believe that the office will continue to play a very important role when it comes to collaboration, to learning, creativity, innovation, building and strengthening the corporate culture, also onboarding new employees, creating a sense of belonging. I think those aspects, the office play a very important role. But rather than forcing employees back to the office, we must create a workplace and a work environment that people want to return to. So again, I would like to emphasize the importance to do our homework. So every organization, they must decide what level of flexibility they want to offer their employees. And the level of flexibility should be, of course, based on the needs of both the employees and the business. Because today it's a lot of focus on the employees, but we also need to consider the organization needs and the function, the group's needs. So based on this, based on the business needs, based on the group and functions, based on the individual's needs, what's okay for us? How do we view flexibility? Is it okay for our employees to work whenever they want and wherever they like Spotify? Or do we actually want them in the office 9 to 5, like Goldman Sachs? In a hybrid work model, employees have the flexibility to get work done when they feel that they are most productive. Some people work best early in the morning, like myself, or other better in the evening. And some people work more productive when they work from home. They feel much more productive at home without any distractions. While some people, they actually want the people around them, colleagues around them. They get the energy from colleagues to get things done. So no matter what your organization decides, I think it's important to communicate and to be clear with your approach. And why? You need to tell your story. And this is something that the leadership should be responsible for. They need to shape and they need to communicate the workplace strategy. And I think this is a very good definition of hybrid when it comes to definitions of a hybrid. The hybrid workplace actively supports employees to combine remote work with office work, which gives flexibility and freedom to the individual. A hybrid model is more than the location you work from. I think this is something very important. It affects an array of elements in the way we run our business, from regulations of a home office, because we need to support. If we really believe in the hybrid model, we need also to support the home office. But also the lack of coffee machine talks when we do not meet in the office. It affects the performance management models, our work processes, and also competences that foster collaboration and digital platforms. And not at least leadership at a distance. So flexible working culture is, in my mind, built on 4 pillars. It's trust, it's communication, it's collaboration, and connection. And I would like to emphasize that the first pillar, trust, requires clarity. The more flexibility, the more important it is to create clarity in expectations, clarity in your ways of working. So if your organization genuinely believe in a hybrid model, you need to define what it means, and you also need to support your employees and managers in the best way. I said genuinely because honestly, I'm a little surprised that there are quite a few companies out there that communicates a flexible or hybrid approach, but between the lines, I think that they actually want, as Goldman Sachs, they want everyone to be back full time in the office. So you really need to consider all these questions before you communicate to your organization. During the pandemic, we have seen a huge shift towards interacting with customers and employees through digital channels. And the use of digital tools have, of course, increased dramatically. And just to give you one example, I think this is quite interesting. We can see from Microsoft Teams users before the pandemic or 2019, there were 13 million daily users. 13 million daily users. And then today, Microsoft says that approximately 270 million users, daily users, use Teams. And I think that's quite dramatically increase of digital tools. And that's not only for Teams. I mean, it's Zoom, all different kinds of digital tools. So meetings, workshops, events, they are key elements in our communication and collaboration. And I strongly think that it will continue to be in the hybrid world of work. But in order to perform with high engagement and high impact, we need to be able to host engaging and productive meetings and events, whether it's for our employees or it's for our customers or our partners. I think we have all experienced challenges with keeping people engaged and inspired in these virtual sessions or digital sessions. And it's even more challenging if you need a high degree of creativity in your sessions. So operating as a hybrid organization, we will produce better and I think more efficient ways of working through more use of communication and collaboration tools. Today, I think most organizations have technology supporting both a digital and a hybrid world work model, but we don't always have the abilities or the confidence to use them. So today, both employees and customers, they expect kind of a great digital experience, and we should. So we need to ensure high quality in this experience, whether it's remote or hybrid, or it's face-to-face. And we need to create, when it comes to the digital experiences, we need to create simple and reliable experiences. And at the same time, of course, we want to increase productivity and we want to increase the overall satisfaction. So capabilities are needed to change behavior and for everyone in the organization to be able to adapt to the new ways of working. So it's not just about technology, it's a lot about our abilities and our competence to actually use the digital tools. So for the future, we need to focus our efforts to create amazing experiences in our communication, in our meetings, or in our events, whether it's in person, whether it's virtual, or whether it's hybrid. So in the respect of time, I will try to summarize what I've been talking about. I think flexibility has become the norm. And there are new expectations, both from an organizational perspective, but also from our employees. So we need to do our homework. Each organization need to do their homework because there's not one size fits all. And we need to define the level of flexibility. And there are new ways to meet, there are new ways to collaborate, and we really need to make sure that we create amazing experience, whether these meetings, events, or collaborations are virtual or in person or digital. So finally, if I would say something, I would say that hybrid ways of working, if it's done right, it has actually a huge unexplored benefits and opportunities for our organizations and for our employees. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Helen, for sharing this experience. And then my first learning is already that hybrid working doesn't come by itself. You need to be well prepared to do that and really think over a lot of things. Otherwise, it will not work and will more become a chaos than a really productive environment. So thank you for sharing this already. Thank you. Next is Mark, my colleague. And Mark, before starting at InviteDesk, Mark worked for 17 years in sales and marketing at Stepstone Group, where business events were a strategic part of marketing, the marketing mix, and where he gained a lot of experience about it. Not only about the value of event marketing, but also about the pains and the pain points for organizing them. Recently, he also conducted some roundtable discussions about the way business events will be held in the future. And well, I'm looking forward, Mark, to hear the outcome and your thoughts on how business events how the trend will change for the future on business events. So, Mark, up to you.
Okay, thank you for this introduction, Jan. Yeah, as Heléne pointed out, the last few years had a huge impact on us as individuals, as a society, and also obviously how that results in our approach towards events. And also the technology played a rather important part there. So in the following few slides, I'll try to look with you at 4 main trends that we see happening. I'll also try to sneak in a few tips, left hand and right, so you get something useful out of it, maybe to think about when talking about your event strategy. Now, the first one, digitalization, it made a huge leap over the last 2 years, and it is not over yet. So it's a trend that continues. So first of all, with the whole new COVID situation, we had to develop new skills and tools, and as things will keep on moving still, also technology will keep on developing. This is something we'll need to continue to do, right? So we need to keep on improving ourselves, so to speak. And also, we need to look at new technologies, because that is not standing still neither. Now, when doing that, obviously, it's really important, and I really invite you to be very critical when looking at new technology. So, is this the next big thing, or is it just a fad? Is this really matching my objectives, what I want to achieve with my event strategy? Because it's not always so. I recently talked to somebody, not even that old, and she was walking around with her 3D avatar on a virtual event. And it was all very nice, cool experience. There was just one little hiccup in the whole story. She couldn't get into a certain meeting room because she did not know how to navigate with this 3D avatar up the stairs. Now, it's maybe a silly example, but also when talking to some of our other customers, we found out that not every target audience is equally tech savvy, for instance, to follow webinars or other type of hybrid events. So you always need to think about those type of things as well. Now, there were really cool things that happened that were developed over the last few years. Especially, I like those technologies that try to take away some of the traditional, I would say, disadvantages or challenges from virtual events. So those technologies that try to get some more engagement in this virtual world, try to work on things like serendipity that you have in the real world, where one thing leads to another. You have a coffee or a beer at the bar, and before you know it, you have some new contacts. And then you have technologies like Present and Connect we are using today. We're only using now a very small part of it, but you have things like Tola, Conversation Starter, GatherTown, and much more of those type of technologies will pop up in the near future. Last thing, if you haven't done so yet, make sure you foresee budget. I mean, everybody is getting more professional nowadays when it comes to virtual events. So more professional, that obviously implies also that you might need to think about building a studio, hiring an event agency specialized in certain things, etc. Now, having said this, it doesn't necessarily mean that a very simple webinar where you just are using Teams couldn't do the trick. So always think about, what am I trying to achieve here? Who is my target audience, etc. I promised some tips. I don't have enough time, unfortunately, to go through everything. So for this one, definitely check the top 10 tips we have on our website, or maybe you can ask in the comments or at your InviteDesk contact for a copy of that paper. Next one. Yeah, we talked about digital events, but what about in-person events, right? Because we all experienced the advantage of just following events from our lazy chair, not having to move, things like that. Well, those type of events, they are in a way back with a vengeance, I would say. Since Q4 last year, we really see that in-person events, they kind of exploded again. Simply because, well, they are second to none when it comes to sharing experiences, right? There are some things you simply cannot do virtually, or are very, very much very more difficult to do. So especially when it comes to connecting people, the in-person events, they do stand out, they do have an advantage. And in a world where companies have much more challenges of connecting with their employees, attracting new talent, keeping their employees, employee events, they will become more and more important in the future. And we already saw that happening in Q4, Q1 this year. Last thing about those in-person events, during the pandemic, we saw that due to certain restrictions, there were often more events, smaller events, and more local events. Now, when talking to people, both attendees and organizers, this approach was really appreciated by both, because this smaller context, the more intimate aspect of it, makes it, well, you just have more quality time to spend, for instance, between the sales crew and your customers. So also towards the future, smaller events, more local events definitely are here to stay. The third trend, it's really about hybrid. And when saying hybrid, you can look at it in two different ways. You have the very broad sense, right, where you just say, okay, hybrid, what does it mean? You combine some in-person elements with digital elements when it comes to events. Not necessarily at the same time. I'll come back to that later. So, for instance, you could offer your audience to follow the event on the physical location in the morning, or they can follow in the afternoon an online session. Big advantage there, of course, is that you can tailor your content. You have more staff available to interact with your audience in the morning, but also online you can interact with your customers. So there are plenty of advantages there. The digital components, they offer you also the possibility to reuse your event content online later on, to capture leads, to attract new attendees for your next event, etc. looking at the narrow definition, or I would almost call it the old school definition of hybrid, where we are talking about an event that runs simultaneously in the physical location, is broadcasted to an online audience. Those type of events, of course, also will have their place, but they probably will not be so massively adopted as thought in the beginning, simply because they are more complex. There are more things to cater for, to think about. More things that could go wrong. What happens if there is a huge traffic jam and half of your audience is going to be half an hour late? That's pretty difficult because your online audience is waiting. But at the same time, even though there are some more challenges, if you get it right, those type of events obviously can be really rewarding. I promised a few tips. Considering the time, I won't be able to go through a lot of them. I just selected here 3 of my favorite ones when it comes to simultaneous hybrid events. I think, well, in a way, it's almost like running 2 events at the same time in parallel. So they really require 100% dedication, your 2 audiences. Also, it's even more important than with any other event. You need to have a flawless planning, A to Z. Your execution needs to be spot on. Ideally, have a backup plan if for one of the 2 audiences something goes wrong. And at the event, involve or try to involve always the entire audience in one way or another, so they all have an engaging experience. Which takes me to the last trend. Event management software is something that will become even more important. I mean, probably a lot of you already have event management software in place, so I'm not going to tell a lot new for you there, but we will see that there will be more events, smaller events in the future. Also, the complexity will increase, and therefore, well, and by the way, at the same time, I didn't mention that, and it's not on the slide, but also a lot of event teams, they got smaller over the last years, or the people that were responsible for events, they got lots of additional and other tasks, which means that your resources are a bit more limited. At the same time, you have more events, smaller events. So using event management software, it will allow you to work much more efficiently. It will take away a lot of the administrative tasks, which means, of course, that you can focus much more on value-added tasks. And also, it's more important than ever to get the right guests at your event, right? Because you want to show that the events that you run, you have a high ROI, and that all starts having the right guests. Now, if you are using event management software, you will be able, for instance, to better target them based upon behavior of your guests, based upon their preferences, based upon input from sales. And also, you will have full control and flexibility, meaning that at any moment in time, you can take action when needed. You can see whether you're going to hit your target or not. If you're not going to hit your target, you have plenty of time to take the right actions. So you can avoid that you run into last-minute calling actions to fill your event, because you can be sure of one thing is that, well, you might be able to fill the room, but probably with the guests you can get away with, not necessarily with those VIP A customers that you want to have. So my time was really, really limited. So I ran pretty fast through everything, but these are the 4 trends that we saw. I'm not going to go through all of them in more detail because I saw some questions already popping up, and I rather answer those in the Q&A session. So Jan, Heléne, Christian, if you can also come on stage so we can start with the Q&A part.
Thank you, Mark, for sharing this already. Let's start with the Q&A. And Christian, you collected the questions, so I don't know if you have any time.
Yeah, that's true. And the questions are coming in. And the first question is actually for you, Heléne. And from your point of view, which is the biggest challenge for embracing the new normal from your point of view?
Good question. Thank you, Christian. I think actually what I would like to see is that the leadership teams take responsibility, that they have a clarity around how we should work. I think many companies are just waiting, or they don't act. So I think this is the biggest challenge, because people want clarity. So I would argue that if this should work in the future, we need to act, and we need to define for our organization, how do we view the new world of work? What's flexibility for us? And then we don't need to have all the answers, but we need to act, and we need to try, evaluate, and do some development during the process. So act. Define your new ways of working. Do your homework.
Thank you for that answer, Heléne. And then I have another one for you, Mark. It's you talked about 4 trends, and if you look at them, which do you see as the strongest one, or are they the same, or which is the leading trend?
Okay, thank you, Christian. A good one. I think the biggest trend, or the one that obviously had the most impact, I think, is this digital acceleration. We come in just 2 years from an era where, well, probably almost all events were in-person events, whereas suddenly everything had to go 100% digital in a lot of cases. So I think that is a very big change. At the same time, the fact that we couldn't do those in-person events for a very long time, that also showed what we were missing, right? Sometimes you don't know what you got till it's gone, as they say. Especially when it comes to connecting people, there you really see that there is a big need, again, for companies to organize in-person events, making sure that you retain your employees, you do some fun stuff with your colleagues, but also with guests, with prospects, customers. It lets you connect on a different level.
Okay, thank you. Here we have another one coming in from Matthias, and the question is for you, Heléne, and it's like this. Companies like Facebook are betting on the Metaverse. Do you expect this to play a role in working from home, or do you feel like that this is only more a hype that's coming up?
Well, I would love to see it in reality, because if I would be at home and I could go in as an avatar in the office, I think it would be very, very nice. But I think as I started today's session, we've been talking about the new world of work for such a long time. And I think we need here and now decide how to work. I think that's a little bit longer in the future before we will see that. I think it would be very exciting, and I would be happy to be part of it. But I don't think for the 2 to 3 years, I don't think we will see it. I think we will have challenges around how to get the most out of our organization and to work in a more hybrid model. So I'm sorry to say that, Matthias.
Okay, thank you. And then we have another one for you, Mark. It's regarding the transformation of the whole event industry. When you look at it, and how fast will it go?
How fast will it go, and how fast it already went? I think because obviously amongst our customers we have many event marketeers, but we do also have some event agencies out there. So those people, it's also their bread and butter to organize events, and they made enormous shifts in a very short period of time, where they had to be very creative about how they run their business, because suddenly everything was gone and they had to reinvent themselves. So I think they all, both the event marketers and the agencies, are people that are very flexible to cope with new ways of working. So how fast will it evolve? I think it will keep on evolving the way it should evolve to obtain what is needed to help companies achieve their business objectives. Because let's not forget that events, it's not about having fun. It's about achieving certain objectives, and that can be lead gen, that can be employee loyalty, that can be many things. And depending on what technology brings us, depending on maybe other situations, I'm pretty sure that we will, as an industry, do what is needed to deliver the results.
Okay, thank you. The time is running out a little bit, so I have do you want to ask some questions?
I have one question for Heléne. When I listen to your story about Spotify, whenever, wherever working, I think as a society we're a bit schizophrenic. On one hand, we want to be whenever, wherever, like Spotify. On the other hand, you see in countries like France, where they're getting laws in on the right to be offline. How you see that evolving in the future? Because if you can say you work whenever, wherever, but you have to be available. That combined to be the right to be offline, to have your privacy, you have your rest. How do you see that evolving in this hybrid space, or in the extreme way then?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. And what we've seen during the pandemic is that this has actually been a challenge. People feel that they need to be connected all the time, and I don't think that's actually good. I think it's very important that we have our work time, and then we need to have the free time. So I think actually it's a great challenge to have the full flexibility when it comes to time. I think it's good that you have some flexibility, but you also need to be certain that people get their time off that they actually need. And we've seen challenges during the pandemic that people really don't feel, återhämtad. What's that in Swedish, Christian?
Recover.
They don't feel recovered. Exactly. They don't feel recovered. And I think for many companies, this is the most important part going forward. How can we, shape and create a healthy workplace for the future? And I think this is a good discussion to have in the organization. Should we actually be a little bit conscious regarding the time flexibility?
Thank you.
Okay, we have one short question left, and then we are home with the time for today, and we will make you available for other tasks that you can do during the day. So the last question is to you, Heléne, that I have, and it's regarding an optimal setup. And how will it look like for the new world of work? What are the different parts that you really need to have for a success?
I'm sorry if I repeat myself, but I think it's to do your own homework. Not all companies are Spotify. Not all companies are Goldman Sachs. You really need to understand your own business needs, the different functions, your individuals in your organization, your employees, and from that define what would be the best kind of recipe for us. And that's something that you need to start. If you haven't done it already, you need to start to have that conversation. You need to define that, and then of course you need to evaluate. As I know Spotify, they've been running their program for 1 year, and now it's time for evaluating. How has it really worked for their employees and for their organization? So do your homework. There's not one size fits all. There's not one recipe, because you can go the Spotify way, you can go Goldman Sachs way. You really need to find your way, and that's quite some complex question you need to answer and deal with, and be very clear towards your organization.
Okay, thank you, Heléne. So from my side, from the Q&A, we are done. So over to you, Jan.
Yeah, thank you. I just have one slide just about InviteDesk that I would like to share. At InviteDesk, at the end, we have one single purpose. That's getting more out of your business events. And we do this by taking the hustle away from you. Let sales and marketing collaborate better, bring the right guests to your events and engage with them, because that's where you get your return from. And the data that you get out of InviteDesk makes you smarter to increase your ROI to plan future events. And that's what you get with InviteDesk. We have already for this afternoon some people registered for the demos and booked some demos. If you haven't done that yet, you just you have a link here below. You can book a demo if you want, and otherwise, you can contact us whatever you want if you want to learn more about InviteDesk. Thank you very much for being here, and hopefully see you next time. Bye.